welcome.
Well, no, it's good to be here. Yeah, it's good.
I invited you here today. This is a secret.
Oh.
You're hearing this for the first time.
Yeah.
I invited you here today because you're my favourite of Unpopular Opinions cast.
Ah, amazing! I'm actually, believe it or not, I'm Mrs. AA's favourite as well, much
Ooh.
to the academic agent's chagrin. He hates that I'm a favourite.
So if you're subscribed to my channel and you don't know what Unpopular Opinions is, it's a show that we, Mark and I, are both in sometimes on the academic agent's channel. I know not everyone watches it. So,
And why would you, to be honest? It is the B show. It's much more important to watch Fake Accents Unite on a Monday evening on my channel.
With the Britisher.
With the Britisher,
yeah.
Indeed. No, yeah, but don't worry about him. It's all about me. That's what it is.
What especially inspired me to bring you on is when I found out that you were born only 1 week before me, or maybe less
Oh,
than
yes.
a week.
We are January babies, as it were.
Because you're a psychology student.
I am at the moment, yeah. I had a career change.
What inspired that?
I was, it was not intentional. I was medically discharged from the Royal Air Force because I had broken both my legs and ended up with what I currently could be described as a form of fibromyalgia, which came out of that, so muscle pain, spasms and whatnot.
I have no idea.
And so I was only in the Air Force for a couple of years, which is, I kind of draw on it a little bit, but I wouldn't really call myself a veteran. And then I was going through the medical stuff on my way out, and I decided that after seeing the absolute travesty that was mental health in the armed forces, that I would probably try and do something about that. And psychology seemed like an appropriate route.
And are you specifically interested in treating members of the armed forces then?
I wanted to open a clinical practice to help veterans, and there's a couple of ways that I could do that. One is to fund a clinic, which would involve me probably going into some kind of managerial, consultancy job, and then being quite well paid, or I could become a clinical psychologist and then go into the clinical psychologist. The work is there, it's always there, it's very difficult to get into, but the work is always there. But the salary threshold for a PhD equivalent job is really, it's about 40k, which, considering that you're giving up 7-8 years of your life to make it happen, is not necessarily what you want out of that. Whereas if you go into occupational, which is just the masters, the starting salary is 50k, for instance, and so there's much more potential for growth where I could fund that. But I'm sure people don't want to know about my job prospects in that regard.
I was speculating that perhaps you went into psychology because there are a lot of women studying psychology.
A lot of other, yes, as you
babes.
can tell, my pronouns are she, her. Bake the cake, bigot. No, it wasn't actually a consideration, but I was watching quite a lot of Jordan Peterson as well at the time when I was trying to figure this all out. And I came into psychology with the kind of perspective that I would not really identify with any of my colleagues of fellow students. I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder in the fact that obviously I come from a managerial job, from a high-stress environment, and that sort of thing, and a little bit more life experience than perhaps even some of my lecturers. And so I've always treated my lecturers as colleagues or equals rather than, having any. I've never had a problem with. I haven't had a problem with public speaking in about a decade, so it's fine. And but most of my colleagues, I was just like, they're kids. I'm not going to be attracted to them. So the women thing didn't really factor into it. No.
You find their immaturity to be a turn off, do you?
Yes. It was quite funny actually. I was asked out by one of them. She demanded that I ask her out, or in a way. She was a Brazilian, so it was sort of Brazilian Portuguese. So she was just like, "Oh, have you seen this new film?" Me, no. What are you doing for Valentine's Day?
Oh, wow.
I was like, nothing. So she was like, "Well, ask me out then." And I said no, because there is absolutely nothing.
That's savage.
There's I know, I felt bad, but she's very pretty, but there's absolutely no intellectual connection there because she's just not mature enough.
Wow.
And so I wasn't interested, and that's the vast majority of them, to be fair.
I mean, all the girls who asked you out.
All the girls who asked me. Yeah, of course. Like, well, yes, one of my friends said to me the other day, "Oh, obviously you got into psychology so that you would be drowning in bitches, Mark." Yes, I was like, that's not quite what I had the attitude for.
I was going to mention about us being born in the same week. Of course,
Oh, yes.
being born in the same week doesn't actually make you much more similar than someone who's born in the same year or even the same decade.
I mean, we're practically the same person, Poe.
Look.
I mean, just look at our faces. Look at the way my long blonde hair flows past my face.
I know you're joking, obviously, but I think after you told me that we were born in the same week, I started looking for these, like, you know, reasons to think that we're similar. Because I think you're quite your opinions. Whenever I see you on unpopular opinions, you're always saying things that are kind of similar to what I'm thinking. Often I don't even have anything to add. If we're on the same episode, I just let you go because I've got nothing to add to what you said. You've summed it all up.
You're perpetuating the patriarchy by that. You know that, right?
Yeah, you say it better than I can, of course. And I want to examine this idea because you're, of course, same sort of social class, I think. Same kind of upbringing. We were just talking earlier, both our parents are sort of Christian, but I think neither of us are Christians ourselves, is that right?
I have a tricky relationship with Christianity. I would say I've retained the moral code, certainly. I go back and forth. I do occasionally pop down to church with some friends of mine who are Catholic, but it's interesting because I'm not from a denominational Christian background, so I find organised religion to be quite an affront to the actual core of the faith.
You're just confirming that we're the same. You and me, we're the same.
So it's been an interesting journey in that regard, and I guess I would say that I'm Christian in a broader sense. I would not really cast judgment on whether or not there is a God or not, and his interaction in my life would be. I'd be interested to have a conversation with him if he's interested. And
so I have a number of questions to examine this theory that you and I are the same on some basic level. Of course, I've never served in the armed forces, although I did actually consider it for a while when I was, what would it be, when I was 20 years old. Do you like Shrek?
Shrek is life. Shrek is love.
Okay, but outside of the meme, the film,
yes.
If I put on the film now, do you think you'd have a good time?
Is this why you've really brought me over? You've got like this Joe Rogan Experience style podcast, and we're going to watch Shrek and Shrek 2. I enjoy Shrek. Shrek was the first, I would say, aside from like other kid stuff like Toy Story, because Toy Story was like my early years, and then Shrek came on the scene, and that was obviously a massive comedy thing, and parents loved it because of all the jokes, and the kids loved it because it's a crazy story. I really like Shrek. I really enjoyed Shrek 2. I'd say possibly that Shrek 2 edges out Shrek 1.
Wow.
And I didn't enjoy Shrek 3. And Shrek 4 was okay.
This comes again from the
similarities.
I didn't even love Shrek that much. I just think it's something that people our age really like, and my husband doesn't get it at all because he was older when it came out. You know, it's like
I think it had a banging soundtrack.
Yeah, of course, yeah. All those songs are sort of classics now. You can probably get a whole club of 26-year-olds shouting along to the lyrics of any of those songs. Yeah, we had a conversation, not you and I, my husband and I, about whether or not Shrek is to you and I what Ghostbusters is to someone his age.
Interesting, because
it's the Ghostbusters of our time.
Because I have no connection to Ghostbusters myself. My friend does, who's the same age, but I've never
seen it.
Well, I think I've probably seen it once or twice, but I don't have this kind of thing where, you know, it was the Christmas movie or something like that everyone put on every year and so on. Whereas Shrek, I feel like just came up time and time again. Yeah,
no, I agree. What about Mean Girls? I think that's the female version of Shrek.
Oh, I'm
in terms of popularity.
Yeah, I could see it. I absolutely detest drama, so I didn't enjoy Mean Girls. But I also had the thing where and people will be like, "Is he gay now?" And I'm not. But I have friends who were like, "Yeah, I watched it because Lindsay Lohan was in it when she was fit," and I was just like, "I don't care. The story is so crap that I'm just not interested in that at all."
I planned a epic video. Like, probably it would have been one of the biggest, most difficult videos I ever made. All about Mean Girls and female toxic. And what's the word? Toxic femininity.
Oh joy! It's
if you don't like it, that's fine. It's just that I think a lot, maybe most girls my age, have seen Mean Girls and can maybe not relate to it, but enjoy it. How did you get to talk to Peter Hitchens? How did that get set up?
Oh, so people ask me this quite frequently, actually. Peter Hitchens is quite an approachable man, believe it or not. And I literally sent him a message on Twitter initially, which he responded to and was just like, just email me. So he said, I don't publicise my email address, but I'm sure you can find it out there. So that's his kind of, his effectively his shit test.
If you can
find his email address, which is, it's just p.hitchens@mailonline, .co.uk or whatever.
You know, take a lucky guess then.
Which is pretty much, right? And he, so I sent him an email. I said what we wanted to talk about, how long it would be, and he was like, sure, as long as you can do it, as long as you can tell me where you're doing it. So he's very interested in someone who is telling him exactly what is going to happen, when it's going to happen, and where it's going to happen, and how convenient it is for him. He's more than happy to travel and that sort of thing. And even, I have his phone number now, because he was just like, yeah, just give me a call if you need to tell me anything.
You ever text him when you get a good meme that you think he'd like?
Oh, we have joked about that a couple of times on the Discord, but it's not. I don't think abusing the relationship would end particularly well. I don't think he has much patience for such things.
You could start a wonderful friendship with him with some.
I don't think he really does friends. He enjoys talking to interesting people. He's very interested in the kind of ups and downs and chatting about how I'd come to be interviewing him in the first place. So that was fun. But he's very, as long as you have the respect for him, that is, that you've done your research on him, you're not going to misrepresent him. Even we ran into a couple of things with this in the interview where he became a bit defensive, and I think it's because he's so used to conceptualizing his interviewer as a potential attacker.
Yeah, you kind of have to be a bit defensive.
But he enjoyed it. Very dry man. Doesn't really do humour. So, the things that he finds amusing are very traditionally conservative humour, shall we say. It's not very edgy when it comes to those things, and he doesn't ever respond to anything he doesn't fully understand. So at the time, on Unpopular Opinions, there was a joke going around. The third biscuit is immoral. The third biscuit is immoral because it represents gluttony, effectively, over the idea that you have a cup of tea, you can only ever have 2 biscuits with it. This is coined by the academic agent, who has the most expensive, enormous biscuits that you could possibly buy, but still don't have a third one, right? And here I am in this interview at the end, having promised the audience that I will ask him whether or not he thinks the third biscuit is immoral, explaining this concept to him, and he's just going, I'm just not going to answer that question, pretty much. And it's like, because he doesn't want to get, it's not a gotcha, all that sort of thing.
Does that make you feel awkward then, knowing that?
It's a little bit awkward, but I think we were on amicable terms.
No, good.
But yes, and then the thing that I find amusing is I was friends with a friend of mine who's now Sargon's camera guy, and we'd worked together on the Liberalists, and I said, you've got all this equipment, do you mind coming and doing this interview with me? And he was like, yeah, sure, absolutely, because he sees an inroad there as well to get Sargon an interview with him. So he arranges this interview with Sargon, and then the morning of that interview, Peter Hitchens pulls straight out and says, I've done some more research and I'm not interested in talking to you ever. And every so often he gets approached again, and he's just like, no, and I will not reconsider.
Wow.
So I
wonder what he found.
So I'm always, I assume it's the I wouldn't even rape you comment.
No, okay. I was thinking of the one, I won't say it here, but the one that got him banned from Patreon.
Oh, possibly. But I think...
the timing probably was different.
Yeah, but I think that he, having done his research and not being interested in doing it, I'm always rubbing that in Carl's face, because that's the only thing I can, really. So.
If you could talk to any public figure alive, who would you want to talk to?
At the moment, Douglas Murray. I'd really like to sit down with Douglas Murray.
Seems attainable, I think.
Yeah, I think so. But he's kind of off the circuit at the moment. He's obviously launched the Free Speech Union, but I think he's not giving interviews, and he's hedging his bets until kind of the transition period for Brexit is over, and then maybe he'll come back on the scene.
Do you believe in the libertarian alt-right pipeline?
You'll have to kind of, you get into libertarian ideas, you end up in the alt-right.
You know, we don't have to have a conversation about what the alt-right is. I think you kind of get the idea of
I understand that. I'm just
being more racially aware than they were before.
You're going full Wignat, Ethnonat.
Maybe not. Well, maybe it's not useful to use these labels because we just spend ages debating what it means to be whatever. But
that's
you get the idea.
I'm not that familiar with the general idea. I don't think it's been floated to me that often. But I don't know. I think when you start exploring the ideas of kind of libertarianism and what are the boundaries of society and what are the boundaries of property and what that sort of thing, I think that can send you in a multitude of directions. I don't know whether or not I would describe it as a pipeline, right? I think it's much more just that kind of questioning can. It's very easy unless you already have a firm foundation in your own kind of your ideals and your beliefs, that it would be very easy to become black-pilled, as they say, on a lot of things, and then or misconstrue things, especially if you're not shall we say particularly scientifically literate. There are certain ideas in there which, if not approached with an understanding of how those conclusions are generated, then it's very easy to become misled, as it were. But I feel like if you don't allow yourself to be closeted into a particular mindset and you're always questioning things, then it seems to be more of a defense against that sort of thing.
Are you black-pilled?
It depends on the topic. On some things I am, on some things I'm not. For instance, I would say it's unquestionable that what the kind of the Ethnonats call the Great Replacement, after Renaud Camus' book Le Grand Replacement.
That's what you have to call it if you don't want to get demonetized.
Oh yeah, of course. I definitely think that's happening. The stats bear it out. Whether or not there is a conspiracy at the top which is forcing this, whether or not it is ignorance, whether or not it is naivete, whether or not it is some shadowy group who are saying we must have cheaper workforce and a more divided population so they are easier to control. I don't really buy into that side of it, but the idea that it's happening and that kind of cultural replacement is happening is certainly well researched. There's an interesting study I was looking at last week, actually, which was talking about bias when it comes to segregation and how communities become segregated from one another. Because if you look at London, for instance, in particular, you end up with these kind of ethnic enclaves. And they worked out that if you only had a 30% inclination to have a neighbour who was the same group as you.
What does it mean to have a 30% inclination?
So let's say, so it's hard to say, it's kind of like if a third of your group, as defined by, but it could be anything, it could be politics, could be race, could be nationality, could be anything. If you have a 30%, if a third of you of that group are interested in living next to that another member of that group, then there are different timescales basically for how long it takes. There's a good website, I think it's called it's either Triangles and Circles or I think it's Triangles and Circles, and they have a number of different things. But basically, even if you have like a really tiny bias in favour of being near your in-group, you end up with these segregations. And if you remove the bias entirely, then you have no bias, so you don't want to move, so segregation just continues if things are already segregated, for instance. So I think that there's definitely a social and a cultural case to be made for ensuring that there is a certain amount of cultural homogeneity in a nation, for instance, to avoid too many, if we call them, conflicts along these kind of in-group borders.
There's a lot there I could talk about, but I'd rather just keep going, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
What did you believe when you were 16 politically?
I was a socialist, which is...
I think it's more common than you might think.
Yeah, definitely. I was basically when I was put on a fast track in school, and they said you can do an A level. You can do an A level early, right? And so we were told that the fruit of the school would give us access to whatever A level we wanted to do. Turned out most of the A level teachers were like, we're not teaching a younger class, and we don't have the resources. So they said, well, you can do an AS level in critical thinking, which is not accepted by any university for any points whatsoever either. Bit pointless. So we complained quite a lot, and they finally said, right, well, you've got three options. You can do critical thinking, you can do history, or you can do sociology. And I was like, oh, I'm quite interested in this sociology thing. Why not give it a go? And it was the most left-wing thing ever. My teacher, one of them, she said to me on the first day that she believed completely in a tabula rasa, blank slate concept, that there was no such thing as intelligence, it was entirely socialised. I had another teacher who I got on quite well with, but he was very out-and-out gay man with strong activist tendencies. His office and his classrooms were covered in those some people are gay, get over it posters. And he had an interesting biases of his own. So I came out of that quite, doing the first year of that quite, I guess, lefty. And then I went into college and I finished off that A level there, and that my teacher there was someone who would say that The Guardian is a balanced and centrist newspaper and the only one that is left. And I fully bought into that, and Corbyn was coming onto the scene at the time as well, kind of for the first time, and everyone was in their left-wing spaces very excited about this. It's a man with integrity, as they would say, even though obviously I've come a long way away from that now. Yeah, so I would say I was a socialist when I was 16. I was almost a communist when I was 18. And then I just went sharply back to, because I'm always questioning, and it becomes very apparent the dissonances within the left, particularly the extreme left. I became a centre-left, and then now I'm probably just slightly centre-right, kind of more conservative.
Do you think you're a libertarian?
I'm in favour of liberty. I wouldn't say I'm a libertarian. Okay.
Yeah, like I said about labels, it's hard to know what.
Yeah.
You probably don't think the same thing of libertarians as I do, as a definition, not as an opinion. Something else about being the same age, I think we probably. You didn't go to a private school or any sort of special. Apart from being fast tracked and things.
I lived on a council estate and went to a public school. Yeah.
I lived on a council estate too. I think we must have had pretty much the same exact curriculum across the country.
I imagine so, yeah. I remember, because I presume this is the same with you, they hadn't really updated the music curriculum to include anything modern past disco.
Disco, yes, we did
right?
Disco as well.
So I remember having to compose a pavan, which is an Elizabethan dance, for those of you who don't know, and not really being cool with that at the time, because you're just going, oh, for goodness sake, like I wanted to produce. We had great technology. We had, the latest. It was Logic Pro 9 at the time, and all this new stuff and all this great stuff to record. And then it was like, oh, you can't produce this EDM thing that you wanted to produce, or any kind of modernized piano music. You have to produce an Elizabethan dance. Although you can do a minimalist piece if you want, in the style of Philip Glass.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's the close. Like, I mean, I enjoyed some of that stuff. Listen to Akhenaten if you haven't; it's great. But the just no, I'm not going to produce something that monotonous. So it was just.
If you did a music GCSE, you must have learned an instrument.
Yeah, I play piano.
Okay.
I did grade 5, and then I probably would say I practiced past that up to about grade 7. And I did theory alongside, so I can read all that stuff. And I learned guitar slightly later on.
Did you have to do any? I don't know if it was just my mad music teacher, but we had to do performances in front of the class as part of a kind of musical education.
Interesting.
Did you do anything like that?
A little bit. I only remember specifically because one of my classmates had to do a song, did Hey There Delilah by the White Stripes, right? And I had never heard this song before.
Plain White Tees.
Plain White Tees.
White Stripes is a very different band.
Yeah, she's doing Hey There Delilah, and I'm going, I don't know this song at the time. The only song with Delilah in it I know is that why Delilah?
Tom Jones?
Yeah. And so I'm going, how on earth are you going to do that on a piano? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. But and I was very, very confused for a day, generally speaking.
What would you ask Douglas Murray if you could interview him?
Oh, I'd love to ask him how his perspective changed. So when he was writing The Strange Death of Europe, he obviously spent a lot of time in the Greek migrant camps. And I want to know what his attitude was going into that, and whether or not it changed substantially over the period where he was writing the book, or if there was anything that surprised him that he. So, for instance, there's the stuff everyone knows, which is that the vast majority of the migrants that were coming through were not refugees, and in fact they were not even from the countries that they purported to be from. But I'm curious whether or not there was anything kind of lower key than that, which was either a pleasant or an unpleasant surprise. I turn it around on you now, Poe. Now that you have a successful interview setup going,
okay.
How if you could interview anyone from the current cast of characters, as it were, that we have in the country, who would you pick?
Well, I keep wondering if I should email Dominic Cummings.
Okay.
I think he's a very interesting character. He was recently in the news, so I think he's probably getting a lot of interview requests now. So I'm putting that on the side burner, back burner, I think they say. I'd like to talk to him, and given that he released that job description for number 10 advisors asking for weirdos and misfits.
Amazing.
I feel like he might give me a shot, being a bit of a weirdo misfit myself.
Why do all women say this? This is the thing.
Oh, I'm so weird.
I'm not like all the other girls. I'm a bit of a misfit.
Well, he's probably getting interviews from journalists.
Yeah,
so,
I know.
So he's probably not getting very many interview requests from engineers on YouTube, is all I meant by that. And what about your YouTube channel? Why did you start that?
It started off as a kind of a side project because I was leading the Liberalists UK, which was Sargon's kind of initial foray into the world of real politics past the internet. And he was like, I'm going to set up this website with this set of principles. If you're interested in the principles, join the group. Joined it. It was this this international kind of mess of, how will we describe it? A mixture of the autistic internet spurgs, trolls, and then people who were determined for real change. And it was really hard to pass that all out. So I, alongside a chap called Ben Brown, and a few others who joined us along the way, ended up starting the Liberalists UK, and we tried to get that off the ground. Now that only lasted probably 5 or 6 months, but we had set up a Liberalists YouTube channel, and but before we had that, I ran a protest, Free Count Dankula.
Is that where that picture of you that gets shared around a lot came from?
Does it get shared around a lot? Interesting.
Well, it was.
It was on the Times.
Yes, it was used as an image on the article in the Times.
I am now a stock photo.
It's a good photo.
Yeah, I'm looking very angry and
edited in here.
very taped over.
Did you have your tape over your mouth all day, or was that just for the photo?
Pretty much. But no, we crowdfunded about £100 so that we could get some leaflets and a banner done. So I got all those those done up. I still have the banner at home. I still have the banner at home actually, which is has you wouldn't tell a joke on it in the style of those old anti-piracy ads.
Yes, clever.
Which we all got behind, and then we marched that down with a police cordon through Leicester Square, and no one was very impressed. And then we had a yell at the House of Commons for a while. But that was my first interaction with Sargon, and he was like, we should kind of grow the sphere of kind of liberalist YouTubers. So I decided that I would take a couple of the speeches from that. I think they're still on the channel, actually. I haven't unlisted them. I'd take a couple of speeches from that, and I would put them on my YouTube channel. I had to come up with a name for the YouTube channel, and I couldn't think of anything obvious, so I called it Not So Obvious, which haunts me to this day because everyone told me that that was a terrible name for a YouTube channel, and I didn't listen to them. I said, look, no one else has called this on YouTube, without realising that there's a good reason why. And I've kind of taken it and made it my own, which is quite nice. But yeah, that kind of kickstarted that, and then I was thinking a lot. I was in the period between my job and starting university, and I'd just come back from travelling, and I'd done a lot of thinking on travelling just to get a buffer between this injury that happened to me and what was going to be my new life, and I'd just come out of a relationship as well, so kind of long-term relationship. So I was reading a lot. I was getting into politics. I was I'd always been pretty politically active, aside from the socialisty communist vibes from my teens. When you're an officer in the Air Force, you have to be cognizant of everything that's going on, because anyone can ask you anything at any time, because the public don't really understand the military, but they do see rank tabs and they go, this is someone who knows something. So you have to have at least the capacity to be aware of what's going on. I remember because at the time the Ukraine crisis, the kind of Crimea annexation was all going on. So I just have continued that interest, and it made sense that I was getting pissed off enough with enough things in the world that I would start to make videos as a kind of catharsis. And I obviously I was quite good at networking, so I made a decent number of contacts through that, and ended up on a podcast, producing my own podcast, and producing my own edited content.
Yeah, I think that's about that. I've been enjoying your videos on YouTube, of course, and everybody watching this should subscribe to Mark.
Hello, baby.
Or Not So Obvious, as he likes to not be called.
Or Not So Obvious is fine.
You haven't thought about rebranding? Because it's not that hard on YouTube.
It's not particularly difficult, but I've embraced it now. I quite like it. So
I think that's a good time to stop then. Yeah, thank you very much for being on, and thank you everybody who is watching. Thank you for coming along, and I hope you have a good day. See you soon.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Hello, baby. You might just distract her enough to...
Baby. I have the baby now. I have the baby.